The Hall of Concordance had been built to intimidate. Its vaulted ceiling arched like the ribcage of a god, forged from crystalline alloys that refracted starlight into slow-moving rainbows. Delegations from 47 species occupied tiered platforms that rose in concentric rings, each section calibrated for gravity, atmosphere, and temperature. This was where wars were prevented, where treaties were weighed like precious metals, and where no one ever spoke from the heart. Ambassador Elias Rourke stood alone at the center dais, hands folded behind his back, boots planted firmly on the neutral grav floor. He wore the simple black and silver uniform of the Terran Union. No ceremonial plumage, no bioluminescent crests, no pheromone veils. Humans had learned early that restraint unsettled the galaxy far more than ostentation. The agenda was routine. Trade corridors, refugee resettlement, the status of the Zelathai border accords. Elias had already delivered his prepared remarks, concise and carefully neutral, and was waiting for the next speaker to be recognized. That was when the hall temperature dropped 3 degrees. A ripple of unease passed through the delegates as adaptive systems compensated. Elias felt it too, a prickle along his arms. He turned as the light at the eastern platform shifted, signaling the activation of the Virexian delegation. Ambassador Ilin stepped forward. She was tall even by Virexian standards, her frame willowy and elongated, skin like polished pearl threaded with faint veins of silver-blue light. Her eyes, large, faceted, and entirely black, reflected the hall back at itself. Translucent membranes along her arms fluttered slightly, a sign of agitation Elias had learned to recognize over months of negotiation. Virexians were known for their emotional control. Interspecies psychologists often describe them as thermally stoic, creatures whose internal chemistry dampened extremes of feeling. They were excellent mediators, poor romantics. Lynn did not activate a datapad. That alone caused murmurs. "Ambassador Rourke," she said, her voice resonating with harmonic undertones that set the hall's translation matrices humming. "Esteemed delegates, I request a deviation from protocol." The presiding arbiter, a floating polyhedron of shifting symbols, paused for a fraction of a second. "Deviation noted. State your purpose." Lynn's membranes stilled. Her bioluminescence dimmed, then flared brighter than Elias had ever seen. "I am here," she said, "to make a personal declaration." The hall went silent. Elias felt his stomach drop. He had no idea what was coming, but every instinct honed by years of diplomacy told him this was dangerous. "Ambassadoress Aylin," the arbiter warned, "this forum is where truth carries the greatest weight," she interrupted gently. "That is a Virexian axiom." She turned fully toward Elias. Every eye, compound and otherwise, followed. "For 3 standard cycles," Selin continued, "I have worked alongside the human representative. I have observed his species in crisis and in calm. I have studied their art, their history, their capacity for destruction, and their even greater capacity for restraint." Elias opened his mouth, then closed it. His throat had gone dry. "In that time," she said, "I have experienced a phenomenon my people believed theoretical, an unscheduled thermal acceleration, a destabilization of cognitive equilibrium. In human terms, pause. I have fallen in love." The hall froze. Not metaphorically. The temperature dropped another 5 degrees as environmental systems struggled to interpret the sudden spike in Virexian emotional output. Crystalline surfaces frosted. Several delegates hissed or recoiled. Somewhere a translator unit shorted out with a pop. Elias felt as if gravity had doubled. Lynn did not look away. "Ambassador Rourke, My feelings are not a strategic maneuver. They are not a cultural gambit. They are a truth that has altered my physiology, my priorities, and my understanding of the universe. The Arbiter's symbols flashed crimson. This confession violates. I am aware, Celine said calmly. I accept the consequences. Whispers erupted. Shocked pheromones flooded the air. A car broodmind emitted a low alarm hum. Virexian delegates stared in what, for them, bordered on horror. To confess such vulnerability in public was unthinkable. Elias finally found his voice. Céline, he said softly, deliberately dropping the title. This isn't the place. Her light softened. That is why it must be. She faced the assembly once more. My species prides itself on equilibrium. We avoid extremes because extremes lead to instability. Yet humans thrive on them. They burn hot, fail hard, and still choose compassion. They build alliances not because it is efficient, but because it is right. She gestured toward Elias. This human stood between my people and annihilation during the Kestrel incident. Not with superior firepower but with a promise. He bet his own reputation, his career, and his species standing on the belief that we could choose better. Elias remembered that day vividly. The hostile fleet, the seconds ticking down, the way he had spoken not as a strategist, but as a man refusing to let fear decide the future. I love him, Celine said simply. And in doing so, I have learned something profound about humanity. The Arbiter's symbols slowed, shifting from red to amber. Elaborate. Humans are not defined by their strength, Celine said, nor by their violence. They are defined by their willingness to feel deeply in a universe that punishes vulnerability. They choose connection knowing it may hurt. They choose hope knowing it may fail. She inclined her head. This is why they are dangerous, and why they are indispensable. The hall remained silent, but the quality of the silence had changed. It was no longer shock alone. It was consideration. Elias took a breath and stepped forward. I didn't ask for this, he said, voice steady despite the chaos inside him. And I would never use someone's feelings as leverage. But I won't pretend I don't care either. He met Flynn's gaze. What you said took courage. The kind my species recognizes. He turned to the assembly. If loving across species lines frightens you, good. Should. Because it means the old boundaries don't hold anymore. A murmur of agreement rippled outward. Tentative but real. The Arbiter hovered, silent for a long moment. Then, this council has witnessed conflict born of secrecy and posturing. Perhaps transparency, however disruptive, has merit. Its symbols resolved into neutral white. The declaration is entered into record. No sanctions will be applied. A collective exhale swept the hall. Later, long after the session adjourned and the frost had melted from the crystal walls, Elias and Celine stood together on a quiet observation balcony. Stars drifted past like scattered embers. I meant what I said, Celine murmured. About accepting the consequences. Elias smiled faintly. Humans are very good at dealing with consequences. She studied him, light shimmering softly along her veins. Is that another reason your species endures? Maybe, he said. We mess up. We admit it. We try again. Flynn's membranes fluttered. This time in something unmistakably like joy. In the vast, indifferent galaxy, where empires rose and fell like tides, it wasn't weapons or technology that set humanity apart. It was the simple, reckless courage to feel, and to stand unarmed in a frozen hall, and answer love with honesty.